try to be an initiator. So I'll anytime anything came up, I try to be an initiator. I always try to jump on top of whatever said so thing it is, so I can have the opportunity to make my director's job easier. And once I did that, you know, um, it creates more trust for the director to throw more opportunities or tasks at me. And then that way we can build that relationship and there's growth from both sides that he's benefiting from not having such a high workload. And then you're benefiting because you're just growing as a young coach and developing. So I would first just say that and come in with, if it's easier for young coaches to or just coaches in general to kind of have like a closed mindset, I would just encourage just keep an open mindset. Don't feel like you know everything. Take that humble pill and just try to learn as much as you can, and whether that's programming or whatever the case may be.
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Gage Taylor, sports performance coach. What's funny about this is we had some information down from guests for CSCCA. I reached out to Gage and I said, Gage, would you, I've got your information down as a possible podcast guest. Would you like to come on? And Gage said, I didn't even know I was signing up for that, but yeah, hell yeah, I'd like to come on. So I like to hear that, man. We like people who are excited about it. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you for giving me an invite.
Well, I'm stoked about it. And I've got to give our listeners a little bit more background too. We actually have an athlete in connection. I was coaching at App State. I've been coaching at App State. And then, you've obviously been at Dallas Baptist. For people who are absolute collegiate basketball sickos and follow Sunbelt men's basketball and Division II is Lone Star Conference, right?
Yeah.
Lone Star Conference basketball. If you're an absolute sicko and you follow these things along, you'll know Xavier Brown, one of the best defensive players I've ever seen play the game, transferred from App State to Dallas Baptist, and you got to work with Xavier for 2 years. Is that right?
Yeah, man, he's a freaking nature for sure.
What was his? What did you have his vertical at when he was with you?
We do it. We usually do a combine, like NBA style stuff when the guys report in August. And I don't remember what his vert was, but we do like a standing and then an approach. And I remember we after we did the approach, we kind of put the vert tech up against the backboard, and he was well over the top of the box on the backboard. He was. I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, he was jumping like a 46 approach or 45, something like that. And then standing
similar
40.
Similar to what we had. And, he was, what cracked me up was like one of the best jumps I've ever seen in my life. His shoes weren't tied. We looked down and his shoes were untied. And like, if you know X, then you know for a fact that's just kind of how he operates, so he's an awesome dude. But I'm glad you got a chance to coach him.
Yeah, he's also always locked in them goofy socks. He's always got like some cartoons or something on his socks.
Yeah. He's a big goofy socks guy. He'll talk to you about anime, any type of sports, any single thing that's going on. He's very knowledgeable on a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, he's really cool. He's a good dude.
That's awesome, man. Well, unfortunately, this whole episode can't be about Xavier Brown, but it is be about Gage Taylor. Okay, so Gage, can you kind of just give us your background, through your athletic career, strength and conditioning, and then what your current position is?
Yeah. So, born and raised like Archdale, North Carolina. I usually just tell people I'm from High Point. It's a small town. Archdale is. Grew up like a normal kid, playing all sports growing up, super competitive. Started playing tackle football when I was 6 years old, and got into baseball when I was 4, and basketball soon around 8, and kind of carried that on all the way through high school. And high school was a little bit is when my football career started to take off. I was a decent high school football player. Ended up getting 2 Division II offers. Ended up going to Barton College, where I played running back for 5 years. And just like growing up, being super competitive. My dad was a football coach. My brother played sports growing up, so I had an older brother, about 10 years older than me. Just being super competitive and not being the most talented guy on my teams. I was always super curious on especially with my frame. I'm around 5'6" now, and when I was little, I was a lot smaller too compared to all the other kids. So I was always curious on trying to figure out like how can I stand out? How can I become a better athlete? So always asking my dad questions, and he didn't really know nothing. Like I remember like I was probably 7 years old. Like, how do I get faster? How do I get faster? He's like, well, just stretch. Just do a lot of stretching. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna stretch. I stretched every day, did my push ups, sit ups, all those normal things like kids typically do. Um, but so after once I committed to Barton, you know, I played there for 5 years during my time at Barton. Undergrad, majored in exercise science and health promotion. Majored or got a minor in business administration. Um, and during my recruiting visit, like my visit to Barton, like that's when I figured out what exercise science was, and I could actually be a strength and conditioning coach. And I always had like a extreme respect for my high school strength coach. As you know, you're in North Carolina, like in the high school sector, there's not like true strength and conditioning coaches at high schools unless you're a private school or Christian school. But my strength coach, my football coach, he did a lot for me. He was a role model for me, and he helped me along my athletic career. So I kind of looked up to him, and going to Barton, and once I figured out like, hey, like I can learn exercise science and I can make this like a profession. Um, I was all about it. So originally I wanted to be a physical therapist. Just because like I kind of taught myself like throughout high school, like I didn't really have somebody to really train me or anything like that. And, so I kind of ran into a lot of injuries and stuff, and I was pushing workouts super hard, and hitting a lot of volume, watching a bunch of bodybuilders and stuff on YouTube, and just going really hard. So I ran into a lot of injuries, um, just trying to become the best football player I possibly could. So I kind of initially wanted to be a physical therapist for that reason, but um, quickly realized like that's not a population I want to work with. I kind of want to be surrounded with athletes, and that's just the population I resonated with the best. And I felt like my purpose would be fulfilled doing that. So during my undergrad, I interned with Elon Sports Performance Football with Nick DeMarco. The year after that, went to a local high school. The strength and conditioning coach, he had previous years in the college sector at that high school. It was Fike High School with Coach Cameron Avery. He's now actually the football strength and conditioning coach at Barton, as well as the offensive line coach. I've noticed that that's been like a popular trend that, you know, and the Division 2, like they're starting to be SNC as well as like position coaches. So I think that's kind of pretty cool. And then after that, I interned with UNC football. During my time, actually, I want to speak on this. During my time at Elon, for those listening, you definitely need to reach out to Nick DeMarco. It's a great internship program. You're going to learn a lot. It was a base of all my strength and conditioning knowledge going in. Like I was 20, so I wasn't even doing, I was still doing core classes. So I wasn't even getting into the exercise science courses yet. So I was still really fresh in the field. So that opportunity really helped accelerate my knowledge in the field. Um, but I was actually let go from that internship program. Um, so during my time there, you know, with Elon being 45 minutes up the road, there was a lot of background stuff going on and within my family. And I was going through a lot of things, a lot of difficult times, and I was out real late trying to fix a family matter. And you know, at Elon during my time there, they actually provide housing, which is really great. So I ended up getting back to the housing at like 5 a.m. Uh and I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna get like an hour of sleep. Like I'm gonna get an hour of sleep. And I slept through all my alarms, showed up probably like an hour late. And my mentor at the time, Jordan Newsma, I believe he's still with the 49ers. He brought me into the office and was just like, like your actions are just unacceptable, and we're going to make an example out of you, and we're just going to have to like let you go. And I completely understood, and I was like, I completely understand. And he was just talking to me like, I think you'll like bounce back from this. Like, this would be a great learning opportunity from you and all those good things. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to make any excuses. Um, I just kind of took it to the chin. Um, so fast forward and went to so during that time was a really good opportunity for me to learn. The next internship, I wanted to get a lot of more hands-on uh, coaching experience. So when I was at the high school sector, that they gave me the opportunity to run the JVs as well as be a running backs coach for Fike High School in Wilson County. And that was a great experience. Got to learn a lot. Worked on a lot of my programming skills during that time with Coach Avery. And then UNC football. Uh, got to learn from a lot of great coaches there. Um, the system that they ran with Coach Hess was somewhat similar to how they operate and run things. So that was a great learning experience. I got to learn under Coach Hess, Coach Blue, Coach Q, Coach D Moog, and Coach Simon, all great coaches. And then so once I finished my last season. So during my last season, I had my CSCS, um, and I kind of took on a lot of loans because during the master's program, uh, you don't get academic or financial aid scholarships was what the majority of my scholarships were because I was on a small athletic scholarship. um, Kind of realized like I don't want to financially, I don't want to keep packing on these loans. So I moved away from football, even though I had 2 years of eligibility left because I had some unfortunate injuries. I redshirted and then had medical red shirt, ended up having like two surgeries during my playing career, ACL and sports hernia. I knew it was probably time to put it up and get the opportunity to kind of get my school paid for and start working towards strength and conditioning more. So I had the opportunity to work at DBU. I just finished my grad assistantship there. Been there for 2 years. Um, Man, there's a lot of growth there. My GA ship. Um, the director there, Dave Trevino, worked closely with me. He gave me and the other GA, which you've actually had here on the podcast, Wakeman Shamel. He gave us full autonomy. We were treated just like assistant strength and conditioning coaches. We had our own team. We did all the communication between athletic trainers and sport coaches. There was no like looking over the shoulder, no hand holding, none of that. But he was there for a good resource. So anytime I had questions or whatever, we can bounce some knowledge off each other and learn from each other. But yeah, that was a great experience. Got to work when I was during my time there. We kind of talked on it. Assisted with men's basketball. My other teams were men's soccer, men's tennis, men's golf, hockey, dance, and men and women track and field throwers. So I had men's tennis my first year there, and then the program shifted into club. We didn't train club, um, and then my second year there, we actually had our assistant strength and conditioning coach. He ended up deciding to get out of the strength and conditioning field, and we weren't able to hire another strength coach. So that's when I picked up on men's soccer and on track and field throwers into my second year. And now I'm currently working with H2F at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Wow, dude. I mean, I love the background. I think it's absolutely fantastic what you can kind of give us, but I'm really curious. Can you kind of take us back to Elon a little bit? I appreciate you being open and honest about it, but like to me, that's something where a lot of young strength coaches would kind of fall off the path of being a strength coach from there, right? That's something where, it's your first, or second internship, kind of your second experience where you're going through this. And, it's something where a lot of people have slept in before, and a lot of people haven't even really had to face the consequence of getting let go. Like you said, you took it on the chin, but what was your mindset like, immediately after that? And then what kind of inspired you to keep going with strength and conditioning?
Man, it was pretty emotional. Like I was pretty tore up by it, like them telling me that, like I put myself at a very high standard. So, I felt like I let them down doing that. But I always knew like what my purpose was and what I'm truly passionate about. Um, and during that time, I learned so much information. I still to this day, go back to that internship manual and maybe pull some stuff back, some resources. Um, but yeah, man, I think it just comes from a deep understanding of my why. Like going into football, like all of that passion that I had for my sport and that work that I put into football. Like ultimately, I wanted to become an NFL running back. Like I remember at age 6, like as soon as I started playing football, I told my mom like, "We're gonna make it. I'm gonna go to the NFL. Like I'm gonna take care of you." That type of stuff. I'm sure many strength coaches can relate to that type of thing. Um, but all that work ethic and all that passion that I put into my sport, I mean, with me just being the size frame that I was and not being the most athletic guy in every single building, I had to put a lot of work in and I had to buy into that process. And that's what ultimately made me fall in love with strength and conditioning because I reaped the benefits. And I seen like once I got started going into high school and I started hammering down weights and training super hard, that's when I started just bypassing everybody because nobody was working as hard as I was. So just me reaping those benefits, I seen the value in it and I've seen the way that I can um, alter and change people's life and be a blessing in their life, just like my high school strength and conditioning coach was for me, and just like my college strength and conditioning coaches were for me. So just like that little, adversity that I had to overcome and Elon, it was just a little bump in the road from my journey.
Well, I love that you're able to take it and grow from it and continue to get better. You know, ultimately, I like to hear about challenges. I like to hear about difficult things that people have had to go through and had to learn about. Is there anything else you want to share with us? Not to just make you, put everything out on a plate while we're doing the podcast, but have there been any other challenges you faced or anything else that's kind of been a learning moment for you in your career?
Initially, when you said that, I was going to talk about my ACL, uh, my ACL surgery because it was during my freshman year and it was literally on the first carry of the game. I was all hyped up. I had a wide zone, cut it up, bypass first, second level, was just one on one, me and the free safety. Went to make a cut. As soon as I plant my foot planted, my knee popped, rolled over, and instantly I knew what it was. And um, I was going to talk about that because that was a big shifting point for me spiritually. So spiritually, like, is a big part of my life, being faithful to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and being a college football player and the journey that I had growing up. My identity was all embedded in the football. And once that injury happened, I realized how like fragile my life was because football was stripped away from me. It was during COVID, so we played in the spring. So that was only the second game of that season. I ended up missing the whole next season. Um, and that was a hard time for me, taking football away from me. That was all I had. It was all I worked for. It was all I focused. But then that focus for me transitioned to what's truly important, and that's in my faith and how I carry myself and just what's truly important in this life, and um, just being a disciple and trying to change other people's lives. And I believe that's my calling, and that's what the Lord wants me to do as a coach, and just to be able to pour into the younger generation athletic population. And now with me being the tactical sector, trying to be a blessing for those soldiers that fight for our country. But um, you said, can you repeat the end of that question referring to the? I know I kind
Yeah.
of went in my athletic journey, but I want to
No,
refer
no,
to
no, that's perfect.
coaching.
I appreciate you bringing up that challenge. Any other challenges you may have faced or any other lessons you've learned throughout your strength and conditioning career too.
Um, I would just say some challenges I had was like during my GA ship and afterward. to find a job because I did. So me and my wife were getting married in August, and um, so like when I was finishing my GA ship, I made a really good name for myself in the Dallas area where I worked. During my time there, I didn't mention it, but during my time there, I worked for a performance course. Um, that's a that's just a company in the Dallas and Oklahoma area where they contract strength coaches out to high schools and train them during the off season during the summer. And I made a name for myself doing that. They had a really good summer with Crandall High School, and um, actually right before I accepted the job to Serco, I was supposed to be the site coordinator there, and I was going to have 4 assistant coaches, and I was going to run the program. So just like I would say that going to Dallas was a challenge for me just because I wanted to be I wanted to make my wife happy and be able to put her in a situation where we're closer to family. So both of our family is from North Carolina. We started dating in high school, so both of our family is here, and um, it was better for her mental health to be, closer to family instead of Dallas. And I've had, stuff come across my table during my GA ship of Division II jobs that opened up in Dallas or Texas in general, and some other places that kind of opened up. There were some other places that you know because of my connection with my director at DBU, those jobs opened up, but ultimately they didn't line up with my values, so I couldn't accept them. So my area or my selection of places to work was very selective because of the location. So I wouldn't go back and change where I landed in my GA spot, but I wish I would have tried making better connections earlier on so I can still stay connected with people because at the time I didn't really put in a whole lot of thought like where how much value it was for me and my wife for like the location of where I work. Um and now that's like a big point of where I want to be at. So I wish I just would have done a little bit better with just keeping up with my connections. And a lot of that had to, you know, kind of stem from Elon a little bit. I had like two, well, ever since then, like even my GA ship, that conversation, that's why I wanted to talk about it because that conversation always comes up. I was like, what's going on with Elon? What happened to Elon? Because everybody knows Coach DeMarco. He's well respected in the field. So even if I don't have him on my references on my resume, they're still going to call Nick DeMarco because it's on my resume. So I kept it on my resume, and um, that conversation came up from my GA ship, talking to Dave Trevino, and we talked over things, and obviously that worked out well. And then um, I got a interview with um, Cannon School with Coach Powell. He's the director there at Cannon School, and his son actually he's a football athlete at Elon. So so I got the interview there, and in that process, he told me he was like, as soon as I seen Elon, I called Nick DeMarco, and I was like, well, that's fine. Like I had it on my resume for a reason. Like I was open about it. Like we talked about it. Um, and he was like, man, you need to talk to him. You need to talk to him. He doesn't even know you're still a strength and conditioning coach. He thought that was the end of your career. And, he was like, you need to have a conversation with him and like talk to him what happened. And because I wasn't, I didn't tell him what happened. I just told him like, I'm not going to make any excuses. Like I understand. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm not putting into this podcast with stuff that was going on because it's a little personal and deep. But so I called him up, and we talked over things. And obviously Nick DeMarco, he's a really good person and a good coach. And he told me like, you keep it on the my resume because we talked over things, and he understood. And that was a really young coach, and there was a lot for me to learn, and he understood with the stuff that was going on. But um, yeah, shout out Coach Powell. I appreciate him for encouraging me to do that because that was helpful because it kept coming up in all my interviews and stuff, and it started to affect me a little bit. I actually was it came up because I was going to be the first GA at Barton College where I played, and that conversation kind of brought up, and it kind of affected my ability for that position to open up. Um, and then I ended up taking the position at DBU. But yeah,
Was it difficult to initially have that conversation? Obviously there was a positive result from it, but was it difficult to kind of call him up?
yeah, for sure. Uh, like going back to how much respect he has in the field, it's like a little intimidating. Like reach out to him after I already kind of messed up being in his program. I didn't know how if he would even respond back. Um, so yeah, there was some hesitation there, but um, I think it's good that we kind of just smooth things over, and um, so yeah,
Good. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad it has a positive resolution to it as well.
yeah,
And I'm glad he knows that you're still actively a strength coach too.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
good
yeah.
for him to know. Yeah.
Yeah, Coach
Well,
Powell told him that stuff, and he was like, "I didn't know you interned at UNC, or I didn't know he's a GA." And yeah, so
and well, now
it's
he
fun.
found out. Now he knows, and that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
That's good. I like it. I will kind of want to go back to you mentioned your initial injury. I mean, it's first carry of your college career. That's very difficult to go through. And then obviously you talked about finding a kind of a higher purpose in life, finding something that can help direct you, and then being able to transform that into the athletes. Do you think that going through that experience and kind of having to struggle with injury rehab, and then I think you mentioned a hernia later on in your career as well too, like these things that kind of took you away from football and transformed you into a coach, do you think those experiences help you coach your athletes now, and especially the ones who are injured, maybe coming back from an injury? Are you able to relate to them because of those injuries?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So like during my ACL rehab is when I went to Elon. So I think when I reported to Elon, I was probably like 4 weeks out of surgery. I was still or 3 weeks, something like that. I was pretty fresh and still in a brace. And Jordan Newsma, he was a Division 1 cornerback, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but um, he also had ACL surgery, and I think he had a lot to do with Elon's return to play protocol. So I got to learn a lot from him. Um, as well as so I had a sports hernia during my time at UNC, and Coach Q kind of helped me a lot during that rehab process. So I got to learn from Q, and then like just going through that, and then my teammates seeing that when I was at DBU, and they seen how hard I worked, and they seen the processes that it took for me to come back. Like I had guys like when I was a player come up to me and ask like ask to make them programs, like ask to help them with their rehab and their injuries. And for sure, yeah, it helped me relate to the athletes, like what they're going through, especially, it's very common for athletes to kind of have in their identity built into their sport. Everybody was the guy in high school, when you go back to your hometown, they refer to you as that's the guy that made it in his said so sport, and whatever the case may be. So like when that sport's stripped from them, there's a lot of emotional and psychological factors that take place. So just being able to meet those athletes where they're at is really important during the rehab process, as well as psychologically getting them back to return to the field to their demands of the sport. Um, and yeah, I learned the best from doing so. Like having these injuries was like a blessing in disguise, especially like as a strength coach, because ACLs are so common, and that just it gave me a little bit firsthand knowledge going through that myself, and to help those guys kind of go through the correct process and to get back to their sport for sure. It helped a lot.
Well, I love it because it seems like you're really able to handle adversity and turn it into something positive in the long run, which is, obviously kind of what coaches do is their natural path, their process, right? We see athletes encounter adversity. We help them through that adversity, whether it's not being able to play, being injured, or, got getting the playing time that they want, or just, general life, and it's kind of coaching them through. It might even just be a sticking point on, a specific lift, whatever it may be. Our job is to help coach them through it. So, I really like how you're able to take your personal experiences kind of help transform them, into a positive environment, and then help do the same thing for your athletes too. I'm curious, you're going into your first full time job. You've had a lot of experience, obviously, but you're going into your first full time job. What are the ways or the areas that you want to continue to grow as you encounter this new job?
Yeah, so working with tactical strength and conditioning, there's a wide range of individuals I could work with. There's going to be people who were probably that D1 athlete and can pick up on stuff a lot easier than the other guys. And then there's going to be those individuals that never touched a barbell in their life. And then it goes from like chronological age as well. Like you might have guys in their mid 30s, you might have guys that are 18, fresh out of high school. So just being able to, um, I felt like I've always been confident in my ability to relate to people and to build relationships with people, but just further that skill from an interpersonal relationship level, and just being able to uh, just connect with people with so many different backgrounds, with so many different cultures, and so many different training ages, and that way we can build trust, create buy-in, and have productive programming.
Absolutely. Well, the connections are also what drive the enjoyment of the career too, right? That's where you can really appreciate everything and, ultimately get the full satisfaction out of the career as well. You mentioned one of your regrets or possible things you wish you did better was networking, which is, I think, every single strength coach will say they wish they did a better job at that at the start of their career. So you're not alone in that. I can say myself, I wish I did a better job with that. It's something where you get told a lot when you're younger that's really important, and you kind of are just like, yeah, yeah, whatever, and
Yeah.
then once you kind of progress through your career, you're like, damn, that really was important. Like I really needed to do that, and I really needed to kind of help build those connections. So again, I want to make sure you're not alone in that. I think if you talk to any strength coach, they struggle with it, but ultimately, there's other people. A lot of our listeners are young interns or people who are looking for GA opportunities. What advice would you give for them if they were looking for a GA opportunity or have just become a GA and are just starting now? Is there any advice you'd like to impart to those coaches?
Yeah, I think GAs probably look a little bit different across the board. I'm not sure if a lot of GAs uh, get the autonomy that me and Wakeman got at DBU. Um, I know I've heard from coaches, they always say like it's hard to come good GAs nowadays. And um, I would just say, like, going into whatever says so organization that you're going into, just be attention to detail to how your director operates, what he's asking of you, and try to take things off of his plate, off of his table. Try to be an initiator. So I'll anytime anything came up, I try to be an initiator. I always try to jump on top of whatever said so thing it is, so I can have the opportunity to make my director's job easier. And once I did that, you know, um, it creates more trust for the director to throw more opportunities or tasks at me, and then that way we can build that relationship, and there's growth from both sides. That he's benefiting from not having such a high workload, and then you're benefiting because you're just growing as a young coach and developing. So I would first just say that, and come in with, if it's easier for young coaches to, or just coaches in general, to kind of have like a closed mindset. I would just encourage, just keep an open mindset. Don't feel like you know everything. Take that humble pill, um, and just try to learn as much as you can. And whether that's programming or whatever the case may be, I know a lot of coaches that have like a strong philosophy or whatever. As a GA, as you're going into those things, try to challenge what your philosophy is, if you do have one, and um, try to try new things, try to get out of your comfort zone. Like, don't get complacent, don't be in this comfortable place where you're just trying to play it safe. Try to put yourself in an opportunity where you can grow, um, and then that way you're just more prepared going into your first full-time position. um, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, no, no, I think that's fantastic. And honestly, I think the second piece of advice, I think the first is great. Like you said, taking the initiative, trying to be kind of the fire starter, right? But I think the second piece is really good advice for all coaches to hear. I mean, honestly, you'd be amazed at how, as you progress through your career, you personally get into times where you kind of stick with what you're comfortable with, right? You've got a system that works. And so you kind of operate with the same system. And then you don't necessarily make as many tweaks or as many changes or continue to try to self-educate as much as you did when you were younger. You'll experience it. I've experienced it myself. So I think it's a great piece of advice for older strength coaches too, is just to kind of try to be open and listen to other ideas, right? And I'll never forget, I had to, I don't know if you're familiar with GOTA or, kind of like that training system, but it's a funky training system. It's a little weird, but I remember initially my first thought was like, hell no, I'd never use anything like this. And then I kind of just, said, you know what, I need to have a little bit more of an open mind. And so I kind of learned a few things and I picked up a few things from that. Right. So you can learn something from everybody. And I think it's great for you to kind of continue to, as coaches grow older, continue to keep an open mind as well, too. So I think that's fantastic advice. I'm cracking up at you asking your father about, how to get faster. And you said you were going through stretching every single day, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll never forget. My dad was a track athlete. He and I were built very different. He was, he must have been 5'8", 165 pounds. I'm about 6 feet tall, 270. So we were very different builds and everything. And we played different positions and did different things, right? And so I remember asking him questions about it. And I got a pretty similar response too. And I'm cracking up just because, again, my path went the same way where I went, the first ever book I got was Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and I just did a ton of bodybuilding workouts and just crushed myself in the gym nonstop. Like there was a year straight where I front squatted every day, just did some dumb stuff. Were there any workouts that you had when you were younger or anything that you kind of put yourself through that you're like, man, I can't believe I used to do that?
I was telling one of the assistants this recently, and he was he was like astounded that even happened. But I used to I don't know, I used to have a really bad ego, and I was a high competitor, and like we were from a small town, so like I'm in the gym, and like if another guy comes in, say he's like from the other high school, the other rival high school or whatever, I was like, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna leave after him. Like I showed up before him, I'm gonna leave after him, and I would do workouts for 2 hours, and I don't even know what the workout was. It was probably I probably went in there and did only biceps for probably over an hour, and I woke up the next morning with my elbow stuck and it wouldn't unlock. Like I literally had to put a heating pad on my elbow and my bicep for over multiple hours just to like slowly start to loosen up my bicep, and that thing was sore for weeks, and that probably happened twice. So I didn't learn.
That's awesome though. I mean, but those are like kind of the stories you never forget. I'll trade you one. I'll go back with mine. We had I was interning underneath a really, well-known strength coach. He was awesome to work with. And I remember, kind of as an intern, I was like, well, I want to be same thing. I want to be the last to leave. Right. And his whole thing was he has to be the last to leave every day. And so we ended up, we was like 7 p.m. We both went over. He's like, hey, let's go do an arm pump. Right. And I was like, yeah, why not? And so we go through an arm pump, and it was Tennessee football at the time, and basically what their workouts were was 3x15 on bicep, tricep, deltoid, shrug, basic stuff. And so we go through it, we do everything, and then we finish up, and both of us, like without saying anything, kind of understood like we're just going to go until somebody quits, right? We and so I started another pump after that. He started another one. It literally got to the point where they had the turf right outside the weight room. And I just started running half gassers. Like I just ran out of stuff to do. Like I couldn't even, know what to do anymore. And then finally Josh Palmer, a NFL wide receiver now, came in at like, 8:30 and was like, hey, can somebody stretch me? And immediately I was like, yes, me, please. Because I'll tell you what, like the coach was older, but he was not giving up. And so that was going to be the first time I was really going to lose on something like that. And so I got saved by Josh Palmer. He doesn't even know how much I appreciate him for that. But again, those are the stories you remember. Those are the things that are really fun about lifting. So I'm glad you were able to get into it and get excited. It happened 2 times though. What was the second time?
Probably the same workout. I don't know. I don't even remember. I had to be 15. Like this is when I was like a freshman in high school, and I'm on JV trying to get to varsity and whatever. But just
That's
stupid
awesome.
training. But yeah, definitely
But
always getting after it.
but it worked out for the best, right? Now you're a strength coach, and
Yeah,
now you can help people stop from doing that too, right? And
yeah,
work
right.
hard, but not go overtrain. Well, I always like to end on a fun question too, right? And knowing you're from North Carolina, I'm excited to kind of hear your answer to this. What is your cookout order?
Double cheeseburger, cheese, two chicken quesadillas, typically a bottle of water.
There we go. That's perfect,
Yeah,
man. All right, so I'm two chicken quesadilla tray with cheese curds, Cajun fries, and a cheerwine float. Which probably explains our size discrepancy there a little bit. You got a little bit more focus on the protein. But I always try to tell people that Cookout is the best fast food restaurant I've ever been to. I love Cookout. I go all the time. I know it's not that great of food, but like it's just something about it that I love. And so when I came up here to interview at App, I remember, our head coach for basketball kind of made like a joke about Cookout or something. And I was like, y'all have Cookout there? And he's like, yes, we do. And so I immediately on my drive up, I got in at like 9 p.m. That was the first thing that I hit because I was over in Texas for 2 years where we didn't have any Cookout. So I like to bring it up with anybody who's from North Carolina because, as you know, it's a pretty big thing around here.
yeah. It's a lot better when the cookout trays were $5 back in high
Yeah.
school. Now they're like 8 or 9, probably 10. I haven't had cookout in
Yeah.
a while. I need to go.
All right. Well, you go get Cookout tonight, and I'll get Cookout tonight. We'll send each other some pictures of it.
Hey, before I
Well,
get, could you
yeah.
could you send me some info on that? Did you say it was GOTA, the training program?
On the Goda. Yeah,
Or,
yeah,
or
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I'm not familiar with it. You guys send me that.
Yeah, I'll definitely send it over to you. It's interesting, and a lot of strength coaches, who are listening may be groaning right now because, to be honest, the way they market it is basically all weightlifting is dumb as hell. Like you need to do very, very specific stuff. But I can certainly send you over some videos and some different things to pick up on because when you get into the mobility side of it, it's really not bad. It's got a stigma around it, but again, you can learn something from everything. You know,
Yeah,
um, but hey, well, Gage, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's been great to get to know you. I will say I'm really impressed with yourself and with Wakeman. Those are two of the kind of the best GA interviews I've had, where young strength coaches coming on who have a lot to speak about and know about their values and know about the things that are important. So I'm impressed with you two. I think it's fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, if anybody wants to, reach out to you or if anybody wants to follow you on Instagram, what would be the best way to do that?
Instagram, you can follow me, Gage.Taylor21.
All right. Perfect. That was your football number, 21?
Yeah,
Hell yeah. There
never
we go. I
changed
like
it.
it. Well, Gage, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Appreciate you, coach.